Hello, I'm Angela, and in today's information snippet, I'll be talking about the hamstrings. So the hamstrings are the muscles that run down the back of our thigh, and many of us often feel that they're either not very strong or they feel that they're too tight and they need to be, they're not flexible enough. It is a very interesting muscle group. There are two muscles that make up the hamstrings, both attached to the bottom of the pelvis, the bone there. So they run over the hip joint, and in that hip movement, they actually help to straighten our leg back. They then run right through the back of the thigh, through the back of the knee, and then attach to the bone just below the knee. So they also help us to bend our knees. So they have two functions, both at the knee joint and at the hip joint, two very distinct functions. It's very easy when people are doing strength training programs to focus on just one type of hamstring movement, often the knee in terms of doing knee bends, and not doing the back of the leg. So it is important to make sure that you're getting good range of movement, both in your strength training and in your general fitness with the types of moves that you do. Runners often have issues here because when you're running, you don't actually go through that same breadth of movement through the hip joint that you would if you were a walker. So it is always a good drill for runners to make sure that you're also getting some good walking in there as well to intersperse the running so that you do get that full range of movement through that hip joint to help make that up. So let's start by doing a few exercises for strengthening this muscle group, and then we're going to run through a few stretches. The first move we're going to do is what we call a bridge, and I'm doing it on a ball because the balls actually allow us to actually get into the hamstrings a lot more with some of the moves that I'm going to show you. So for this first one, essentially it's a bridge. So having your feet on the ball, you can either make it easier by bringing that ball closer to your body or taking it further away, so you're just sort of putting the weight on your heels predominantly, and from there keeping that core switched on, bringing yourself up into a bridge and then back down again. So we are working the glutes quite a bit as we're doing this, but we're also coming down into the hamstrings. So bringing that up, keeping that core gently switched on, and back down again. This is also a very good core exercise because, as you would guess, it's very easy to lose it and your feet fall off the ball and then back down again. How we make this harder now is we can actually put our feet flat on that ball, and from there bringing ourselves up into a higher bridge. So we're really compressing through the hamstrings. We're getting a lot deeper in there, and then bringing that back down again. And as you can see, you probably can see there's quite a bit of wobble in this ball because it does require a lot more stabilization to actually hold yourself up in this position. And even here, I'm really starting to feel that the hamstrings are really, feeling that. So taking that back up, and then bring that back down. A third move to do in this sequence is where we actually bring that ball in towards us and back out again. So for this one, core is switched on. Quite a tough exercise, so it's hard to do too many of these, but I think this is probably the toughest hamstring exercise out there. Bring yourself up into a bridge, and from there rolling the ball in and then rolling it back out again. So rolling it in and then back out again. So we're really getting into the hamstrings, really compressing them, both over the knee joint in this case, and also working through the glutes. Just doing a couple more of those, and then back down again. Another exercise that works right through the back of the hamstrings is a deadlift. And this is also known as a Romanian deadlift as well. We're going to start with our feet hip distance apart from each other. And from here, keeping that core switched on, we're just hinging at the hips, keeping our back in that neutral position, natural curve of our spine, shoulders back, and just going down to what is a full range of our hamstring. And for some people, this might be here. For others, it might be further down. What you want to make sure you don't do is arch that back. So you're keeping that spine in neutral, the natural curve in your lower back the whole time, and from there, bringing yourself back up again. So from this one, breathing in as you go down, and then bringing yourself back up again. So you're not bending the knees. Having said that, you're not locking the knees either. You'll just have just a little bit of a tiny bend in those knees just to make sure you're not overstressing the joint there. And all the work is right through the back of the body. So breathing in as you go down, breathing out as you come back up again. Another variation on the deadlift is to do it with a single leg. And obviously this requires an element of balance and stability as well. So for this one leg goes back, counterbalancing the arms in front of you, and you're hinging at the hip, taking that down, and then from there bring it up. You can either do it as a single leg, single knee lift, and then taking that back again. So because we're just balancing on the one leg, these poor leg muscles have an extra load to do. An easy way of doing that also is to just have one foot just in front, just up on the ball of the foot, so you're not putting too much weight on it. Core is switched on, and from there, bringing yourself down into that same position. So down and then back up again. So this is a much more stable approach to doing that exercise, and maybe a nice progression move so that you actually start by doing this, and then from there move into doing the single leg deadlift. Gosh, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Just make sure when you're doing this, shoulders stay down and back, core is switched on, so there's no arch in your back. You don't want to do this. Always keep that back in that neutral position as you're doing it. Another exercise that you can do to work the hamstrings is to take a little Pilates squishy ball and just place it behind your knee. Ideally, you're holding onto something like a chair or a bar, and from there, just squeezing that leg and releasing it. So you're squeezing and releasing. So you're trying not to let the ball fall out, but just doing lots of squeezing through there. And it's predominantly the knee joint that's actually moving there to actually work the hamstring. So it's a really nice way of activating it. To actually get a little bit more, you didn't see that, to get a little bit more intensely into that one, what you can do is take the ball, place it just behind your knee in that position on all fours, and from there squeeze and release. So I think with this one, because we're actually in this position and we're not worrying about trying to stabilize ourselves, it's a lot easier to get deeper into the move. And to make it harder, little pulses. That's it. And you can also just add a little bit of movement through the hip joint as well, so that you're moving the hamstring in both over both joints. I'm now going to run through with you a couple of things that you can do to give you that feeling of easing the tension through the back of the hamstring. And the first one is doing a stretch. Now I'm using a band because it does help you to get into that stretch just a little bit more. For this, I would wrap that band around the outside of the sole of my feet, and then either in a seated or in a lying down position, give that a nice stretch. Now, if you tend to bend your knees when you do this, a way to actually try and get into that hamstring stretch a bit more is to, even if your leg is back there, just straightening the back of the knee and holding in that position. And then you'll find over time, you may get just a little bit more of an increase in range of movement as you do this. Just make sure also that if you are one of those people that can actually reach the floor overhead, just keep that leg just by your ear. So you're aiming towards your ear with that foot. And then repeat that on the other side. Another thing which is also good to do is give the glutes a bit of a stretch, because quite often that feeling of tightness through here may be the glutes rather than the hamstrings, or both of them together. They can also lead to a feeling of tightness through the lower back. So just giving that whole lower part, lower back part of your body a good stretch is a good thing. For the glutes, probably the best stretch you can do is taking the one leg, crossing it over the other one, and from there bringing the other leg off the floor, pulling that in towards you. So we call this a figure 4 stretch. And just holding this one for 15 to 30 seconds as well. And then swapping over it and doing the other leg. So with the foam roller now, we could start by just sitting on the foam roller and just start by giving the glutes a bit of a stretch. So for this one, you would actually come at a little bit of a diagonal on here and just rolling backwards and forwards, seeing if you have any sticking points. And if you do, just see if you can just, despite the discomfort, stop at that point. You'd probably find, but after a few deep breaths, that the feeling of pain and tightness starts to dissipate a little bit. And then you can just roll a little bit further. If you find another point where it feels really, really tight, just stop again. Take a few deep breaths. Perhaps just do little micro rolls from one side to the other just to get a little bit deeper into it as well. And the same applies when you're doing it on the stretch through the hamstrings. So for this one, you would actually just come up and balance on your hamstrings. It does help to have a little bit of upper body strength there, so you can actually hold yourself, finding a spot that it's tight and just just holding it for a little bit and then carrying on as well, and just doing a little bit more of that stretching. To make it a little bit more intense, you can actually cross one leg on top of the other, and then just roll a little bit to the side so that you feel as if you're getting just deeper onto that one leg, and then onto the other one. Do take note that quite often it's not necessarily that the muscles are tight, it could be that the nerves in that area of your leg are actually tight, and that is quite often the case for many people, because no matter how much you stretch, you don't really find relief. In that case, some massage will help a little bit with stretching through and giving the nervous system a little bit of, I guess, reprieve. But just bear in mind that it isn't necessarily a muscular issue. The best thing you can do is just to keep that movement, keep a good range of movement going through the legs as well, so that you are starting to send the messages to your brain that your leg is quite comfortable in actually being stretched, and therefore it shouldn't be something that gives the leg discomfort. Hope that helped. I hope that these are some exercises and some stretches that you can do at home, and please do drop me a line and let me know how you're going with it. Thanks again for watching, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel below. I'll see you next time.